general election.
I'm Bob Mabry. I'm running for Court of Appeals, 9th Supreme Judicial District, and I have no opposition in the Democratic primary.
Hello, my name is Julia Rodriguez. I'm running for Jefferson County Commissioner in Precinct 2, and I have no opponent in the Democratic primary, but I do have 3 in the Republican primary, so we'll see how that shakes out.
Good evening, I'm Chelsea Ramos. I'm running for the 317th Family District Court. Judge Larry Thorne is retiring, so that is going to be vacated by his retirement. I'm unopposed in the Democratic primary. I have 1 opponent in the Republican, in the general election.
Hello, I'm Jess Prince. I'm running for Jefferson County Clerk, and I do not have an opponent in the primary.
Hello, I'm Charlie Hallmark. I'm your current county treasurer. I was elected in 2018, and I do not have an opponent in the primary, but I will in the general election, and I'm looking forward to a robust campaign.
Thank you. And we thank each of these candidates who are here tonight running unopposed. But we do have those who are here tonight that will have a candidate, someone running against them, and we have a few questions that we would like to ask at this time. So we're going to ask at this time, if they would come up to the table, our candidates who are in this upcoming election. We have as our candidates here tonight, right here in the city of Beaumont, we have our own candidate that's running for governor of the state of Texas, and we're glad that he's here tonight. We would like for you to meet the candidate for governor of the state of Texas, Reverend Michael Cooper. If you would, Reverend Cooper, come up to the front and take a seat. Also, we have candidates for District 22, Christian Manuel Hayes. We'd like for him to come up. Also, Mr. Joseph Trahan could not be here tonight, but he does have an alternate. And Ms. Lisa Weber. Amen. Would you come up as well? We're glad that you're here tonight. And these are the candidates for District 22, Ms. Weber, along with Mr. Christian Manuel Hayes, and also the candidate for Joseph Trahan, who's not present on tonight.
Should I take his spot?
Well, we're just glad for you to be here. And so tonight, as we begin, we have a few questions that we're going to ask each of the candidates that are here. And we would like to begin with our governor candidate, Reverend Michael Cooper. And if you would, Reverend Cooper, just give us some of the things that we are looking at tonight, as well as for you. We want to ask the first question. What specific thing that you have or that you would look at in your first 90 days in office on your agenda, what you would look at in your first 90 days of office?
Great. Thank you for that question. First of all, it is an honor and a privilege to be at home in more ways than one, so it's hard for me to just start talking and speaking as if though I'm not in my own home. Matter of fact, this is my childhood church home. But to answer the question, we need to make sure, and I was speaking to some of the candidates earlier about education, we need to make sure that education is at the top of the ticket of all of our concerns. Education is tied into criminal justice reform, bail reform, those things like that. I speak to our local county sheriff, and she tells me all the time that we have over 1,000 young men that are sitting and rotting away in a jail cell. I spoke to a pastor just the other day, and he has nephews that are serving sentence for 4 and 5 years because of COVID. They can't even get to their cases, and they can't make the bail. So that means that these young men are 17, 18, 19 years of age that's not graduating. So in the first 100 days, I'm going to focus all of my attention. Now, listen, we have to be like an octopus and work on everything: education, health care reform, criminal justice reform, all of those things, ERCOT, the grid. Some of us in the state of Texas froze in Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. We have all kind of issues, but the number one issue is to make sure that our kids are dealt with in a timely manner. Mental illness is an issue in the educational system right now. So we have to make sure we focus on that. Thank you very much for the question.
We also have another question for you too, Governor. It's all right if I call you Governor. What changes, I know you just mentioned some of the things that you have noticed that's going on in our state, in our community, but what changes do you see that's necessary to make in the state of Texas as governor?
Well, I mean, we're dealing with those here locally, which is some of the reasons why I decided to go on the state level. I love my neighborhood. I love where I grew up at, and still growing. But all I want to do is serve on the school board. That was it. When I met our president here in local NAACP, Paul Jones, he told me, he said, boy, you cannot serve on a board that's owned by the state of Texas. It's a board of managers. You're not going to serve. So I said, well, who's in charge of that? And I found out that there was this guy by the name of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and the Education Commissioner and all of these things. So I said, well, I've been trained professionally as executive manager for over 30 years for the same company. Most of you know that company, and they've trained me. Degrees does not replace experience. 90 years they've been doing what they've been doing, and they taught me how to get to the head of something, to change something. And local laws, we have folks who's been on the school board, and they understand the hands are tied. You can't change local laws until you go to Austin, Texas. We have to make sure that we have representation in Austin, Texas. Now, I'm excited not being on the road tonight, but at the same time, I thought I was going to relax, Pastor Benoit, but it's hard to relax. I get excited when you ask me these questions, and so I have to let you understand is that we need to send a warrior, someone that has learned and trained how to fight against the folks that do not consider us as equals. We need equitable, not equal. We need equitable. She told me I have 30 seconds, but I'm just here today to tell you is that you need to send the little bitty boy that grew up in this church, that's a grown man now. I'm no longer little Michael. You need to send a man that understands that your boys and girls deserve the best, that's going to fight for them and all of their rights. Voter suppression is another issue that we have been dealing with, that we have to continue to fight. And until we change the laws, we're going to make sure we use the laws that we know now and do better until we can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Cooper. And also I would like to address the fact that if you do have a question, write it out and just raise up your hand, and then we will come and get it so that we can be able to ask the candidates the question that you want them to answer tonight. So we're going to go to the District 22 candidates. We have with us today Mr. Christian Mania Hayes, along with Ms. Lisa Weber. Both of those are candidates for District 22. So we would like to begin asking the question, if elected, we'll address you first, Ms. Weber. If elected, how would you work with the Appropriations Committee if you were or were not seated on this committee to assist our area? I think it's on.
Okay, could you repeat that question?
Yes, ma'am. If elected, how would you work with the Appropriations Committee if you were or were not seated on this committee to assist our area?
Oh, well, first of all, I would make sure that for this area, let me take off my, apologize. I would make sure that I would make myself known to the Appropriation Committee. And I would also make myself known to those who are actually authoring bills that are going to be going through to the different committees in order to be able to represent this area. This area right now, appropriations were looked over within the past month. I think it was about $2 billion was looked over, a deadline wasn't met. However, we did receive COVID relief in about, 15 million a month ago and 16 million. So that's 31 million compared to 2 billion. So the Appropriations Committee, I would literally get to know them, to let them know that I want to work with them. Also, I would see how I can actually become a member with them on that committee. And not just that, my staff, if I'm elected, to become familiar with the appropriation committees and their deadline dates. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
All right, thank you. Let me apologize because I didn't give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. If you don't mind, we would like to just to get to know a little bit about you and how you feel as though you could be qualified for this office.
My name is Lisa C. C stands for Craigette. My mom thought she was having twin boys and girls, but my daddy stepped in and named me after Lisa Presley. Anyway, my name is Lisa Craigette Fisher Weber, and I grew up here in Southeast Texas. However, I am from Louisiana. If you read my bio on my website, I was brought to Houston, Texas in '69, and my father brought me and my mother, there it is, to have a better way of living. And unfortunately, in 1973, he lost his life to an on-the-job accident. So in '73, a lot of things changed for me. My hero was no longer with us. So my mom's father came and got us and brought us back to Louisiana, and then he brought us to Beaumont. Now, growing up in Beaumont, I went to Fletcher Elementary School. I went to David Crockett Middle School. I graduated from Beaumont Charlton Pollard High School. Now, at the time, back when I was going to Beaumont Charlton Pollard, I was looking forward to going to Hebert High. But it was federally mandated at the time that they desegregate Forest Park and merge the schools. I remember all of this because we talked about it. So with that being said, you had Forest Park, which was majority white. I think you had maybe 3%, 6%, maybe off a little bit, of African Americans. And then you had South Park High School, and you had Hebert High School, and they were all part of South Park Independent School District. I remember this. Now, when they desegregated, they made Westbrook. Now, Westbrook class of '83, my husband, which was my childhood sweetheart, graduated that first year. Now, back to me. At this time, I am very, very humbled to be before you all. I want to be a representative for the great state of Texas for District 22. And I am an educator also of 22 years. I'm not just a product, I'm an educator. And I am an alumni of Lamar University. All of my degrees say Lamar University, Institute of Technology, Lamar University, College of Education, Lamar University, College of Engineering. And with that, I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Mr. Christian Emanuel, who's a candidate for District 22 as well. And Mr. Emanuel, welcome today. Thank you for coming out. And we would just like to begin as well with you introducing yourself and tell us why you're qualified for this position.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Christian Emanuel. I was born here in the Southeast Texas area. My grandmother is Miss Hargie Savoy, and I was raised pretty much in the Martin Luther King spirit with a family who always taught me that life is about service. We sometimes forget that, and that was something that was heavily instilled in me. And so I've been working for State Representative Desautels since I was 18 years old. He gave me a shot at service, and I hated it. And I stayed, and I just kept staying. And for 17 years, working under him, being mentored by him, that's what I've learned, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running, because it's about service for me. It's about giving back to our community. We always like to say my, but our community, because we all live here, we all live connected. And I want to give back to the people who've given to me. And I say that because every one of you who voted for Representative Desautel over the years, you voted to give me a shot. You gave a young black boy from Southeast Texas, where we don't often get jobs that are not just in industry, or not just in education, or not just in nursing. There's now only 9 black chief of staffs in that building. There were 13 4 years ago, but we're back to 9. It took Texas 170 plus years to get 13 black chief of staffs. Representation is important, and that's another reason I'm running. I want to run to represent our area. I want to run to represent the young children who look like us, who look like me, and let them know that this is your city, this is your government, you are important, you matter, and that there's someone in that building that's going to put you on their shoulders like Rep. Desautels did for me.
Thank you. Now, if you are elected, what does the first 90 days in office look like for you?
First 90 days for me is going to be a lot of organization because you really can't do anything for the first 60 days. Committees aren't even assigned yet. You don't really even have committee assignments, and that's actually a vital time for you to make sure that you're fine-tuning your legislation. You're going back to your community groups, you're going to your pastors, you're going to different people and saying, hey, do you like this bill? Is there something we need to change on that bill? And that's something that I want to do. Since the first 60, 90 days are not very, very fast-paced, they're about getting organized, I want to make sure that I'm talking to people. If there's legislation that needs to be passed that you're like, hey, can you add this on here? We have enough time. And I want to make sure that the community is a part of my legislative process. That's what I would do for my first 90 days while we wait for committees and have everything transferred.
And the same question that I asked Ms. Weber earlier, if elected, how would you work with the Appropriations Committee if you were or were not seated on this committee to assist our area?
Yes. For anyone who doesn't know by any chance, the Appropriations Committee is the most powerful committee there is on either side of the House, in the Senate or in the House part of it. This committee decides what money you get, and this committee only meets for less than 140 days out of 140 days, and then they decide how much money you get with the budget. So I tell people this in a short way. Think of you and your spouse and take both of your incomes together, and then you decide what goes to what payments. How it would work with the Appropriations Committee, if I'm on it or not on it, is making sure I'm talking to every member on the Appropriations Committee, and as soon as they find out who is getting what subcommittee, I'm gonna go to them and I'm gonna make sure and say, hey, is there anything that I can do? Can I send my staff member in here after you've had your meetings? And whether they say yes or no, the good thing is that all of the hearings are public. I would make sure that my staff was watching all of these different committee hearings, and I would make sure that I pushed the agenda through, and I would make sure that anything that we needed for this area, even when it doesn't come to the general revenue budget, I would make sure that we used riders, which use fees, to make sure that we could get our money to this area. So by hook or crook, I will make sure that Jefferson County gets everything that they're supposed to get.
Thank you. Ms. Weber, how accessible will you be to your constituents on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most accessible, 1 not accessible at all?
I plan to be 10 plus. I want to be extremely accessible. I want them, when they call, their response is given to me right there. I want them to be able to reach me through social media, because that's what they're into now, a lot of people. So with that being said, I want to be accessible to everyone, because that's what the seat entails. You should not have to call and not be replied to. So at this time, I will be very accessible to my area in which I represent. So there would be anything that I would not want them not to be able to come to me about, especially if I'm in session, okay? If I'm not in session, I still want to be accessible. So with that, I yield.
Also, Ms. Weber, thank you for that answer. Also, I would like to ask you, how do you plan on building coalitions in the Texas legislature, not just on a bipartisan basis, but also with both chambers as well?
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to talk, because it all starts with talking, and going to the different representatives and talking to the different committees and their chapters, their subcommittees, going to the different meetings that they have, making myself accessible, making sure that the staff that I have is accessible also. Now, with that being said, I have an organization in which I belong to in church. I'm a member of over 25 years. It's called the Knights of Peter Claver Ladies Auxiliary. We are literally set up as an organization that represents a governmental entity. So with that being said, we would have to talk to the different personnel that represents these committees. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Hayes, I also want to ask you the same questions that I asked Ms. Weber as far as your accessibility to your constituents on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most accessible and 1 not accessible at all. Which would you be?
Well, I would plan on doing kind of what I've been doing for the last 17 years, and that is being accessible and making sure that my staff is accessible. Of course, during a legislative session, it can become a bit difficult because you have to be able to legislate, and that's the reason that you have staff. You can't burn the candle at both ends. I would make sure that I had a constituent services staff member who was monitoring and making sure they were replying to all constituents. Any constituent services that me as myself as a member would have to call any agency for, make sure that I do things of that sort. And then outside of session, making sure that you're going to events like this, making sure that you're talking to people in our communities, making sure they know their state rep's cell phone number, their state rep's email, knowing where their office is. That's how you stay accessible to me. That's something that I would continue to do. And make sure, as I always tell everyone, every constituent that calls their family, and making sure that they feel like family. Whether their child is incarcerated and they're just trying to visit them, or whether they're just having a little tax problem with their business and they need help, treat everyone as your family. That goes a long way with people.
Thank you. Don't get tired of me, Governor. I'm coming back to you in just a moment. Mr. Hayes, again, how do you plan on building coalitions in the Texas legislature, and not just on a bipartisan basis, but also with both chambers as well?
Well, for me, fortunately, I do have relationships already with members on the both sides of the aisle. I've been very blessed enough to say that a lot of these members, they raised me. Senator Miles, who used to be state representative, Miles, is now a senator. Sinfronia Thompson, who's the dean of the Democratic Party. I would work with the members that I've already worked with for years. Some of the members who I've fortunately been there to help them train their staff on what it is to be a chief of staff, to be a legislative director. And then also making sure I'm working with members who have common interests like our areas. There are some members who you can't work with and some members you can, but there are always issues that you can work with everyone on. And that's what I would do. Always find the districts that are very similar to Jefferson County and go to them and say, hey, can we work together on this? Not attacking them, not calling them names, not saying my legislation is better, but building a family like what we have here in our area.
One last question. How do you plan on passing your introduced legislation and making sure that constituents' services are still at the forefront of your office?
That's one of my favorite questions. I would make sure that just as I had a constituent service person, I would also have a legislative director, and making sure that my chief of staff, who I am now, but who would be my chief of staff, is going to each person and making sure at the end of every day that there's a report given to the chief of staff, and then make sure that that report is given to me. So I can easily say what's going on in the legislative issue, what's going on in the constituent services issue. And the good thing is, doing all of these jobs, I can look at that and say, hey, you keep giving me this report with this person's name. Why is this taking more than 4 days? And then that way, not to scold the staffer, but to teach them, hey, there's a faster way to do this. I can get you a response in 24 hours. Call this person, do this and do that. So making sure that you're giving them adequate services by making sure that you're teaching your staff what is proper and how to work efficiently, not hard, because we got to work smart, not hard. And then also at the same time, making sure that our constituents know that I'm doing everything, and at the end of the day, I don't quit working for them just because it's 5 o'clock. That I continue to move on, continue to make sure that the next day is as productive as the last.
Thank you. Governor, I have a question for you at this time. You don't mind me calling you Governor, I'm sure.
Come on, Pastor.
How do you foresee voters holding you accountable?
Oh, that's awesome. Matter of fact, you all know that I'm currently the president of NAACP, but because of all of the other things I have to do, I've decided not to run again in November. There's so much that's on the plate. But the public holds me accountable now. When I'm not in the office, which I still have a day job part-time, my phone is available. Matter of fact, watch this. My campaign manager told me to stop doing this. 409-291-1078. They hold me accountable. I got off the phone today with a young lady that's not from Southeast Texas. Her son is incarcerated in Palestine area. My jurisdiction does not run over there. There are other presidents of the NAACP that's in that area. She said, but I want you. I see your work. I see your action. I see your service. I love what Brother Hayes just said earlier. It's not about working hard. It's about working smart. I was on a campaign trail, and I told one of my staffers, he said, you keep telling people all your life you had to fight. Even when you was a little boy, you had to fight for food and stuff. He said, you must not be a very good fighter. I said, why is that? He said, because you don't have a lot of meat on your bones. What he doesn't understand is this, is that in order to grow up, you need the right proteins. So I'm 6'6". I was built to fight. I was fighting for voters' rights in Austin, Texas, in Washington, D.C., while I was arrested with a lot of other civil rights leaders. And I was kind of perplexed, Pastor, because of the fact that here we are in 2022 fighting for the same thing that they fought in 1965, hoses and dogs, and we're still yet the same place. We need a fighter, not someone that's a billionaire or have millions of dollars. We put a president in a seat, we can put the first African-American governor in a seat. I need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I'd also would like to pose that same question to Ms. Weber and Mr. Hayes. How do you foresee voters holding you accountable?
Okay. Education is the foundation of every nation, because an uneducated nation is a defeated nation. So, voters, if you vote for me as an educator, the children of this area and the great state of Texas will have the resources that they need for a better education. And with that being said, the resources, what I'm talking about is good teachers, well teachers, a staff of teachers and paraprofessionals that are going to go to not just fight, but war for them. Okay? And it starts with the teachers having adequacy for themselves to be taken care of. We have a lot of teachers that are coming out of their pockets to fund their classrooms. So what I would propose is a $40,000 raise for every teacher, not in just District 22, but in the great state of Texas. Okay? That way they can pay off some bills. They can literally purchase a car. They can purchase a home. Okay? A lot of teachers are not getting into the profession because of not just the pay, because they have the skill, but they need to know that they're going to be taken care of. They're the foundation. Okay? If it wouldn't be for a teacher, we wouldn't have this great man right here running for governor. Okay? If it wouldn't be for teachers, we wouldn't be all sitting up in here wanting to know what we have to say in this area, in this space. I say that to say is that a teacher is the most underpaid and overworked individual that I know. And I can say that because I am an educator. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes, same question. How do you foresee voters holding you accountable?
One way I would like to make sure that voters hold me accountable is I want to teach them what the job actually entails. I want to make sure that they know exactly what their state representative is supposed to do by answering questions and teaching them. And also, one thing that you will never have to worry about with me is there'll always be an audit, because there is a monthly report that goes down to every single phone call. That goes from every piece of paper, every pen, and make sure that whenever someone says, hey, let me see your financials, I'll say, okay, send me your email address. So, and also to show them very simple tools like, let me show you the website where you can track every single person, and show them how easy it is to be a part of their government.
Thank you. One other question we would like to address, each of you to address from one of the persons here in the audience tonight. Just the first question we asked, how do you foresee voters holding you accountable? Still with you, Mr. Hayes, do you have any tangible ways that we can make sure you are accountable?
Well, I would say, maybe from a staff perspective, I would say absolutely. Everything that happens, except for meetings, are all public. And I would always invite people to come to the Capitol and come to our office. I was always raised under State Representative Destil to have an open door policy, to make sure that people knew that whenever they had any questions, they could always come to our office. During the pandemic, we made sure that we were all vaccinated in the office, and whenever we had groups in, we would always open windows and leave doors open. We had purifiers, because we wanted people to feel that their government hadn't shut down on them. And that's something that I would like to continue to do, is to let our community know that your government is not closed just because it's 5 o'clock. As I told a lady one time, when her husband was passing in the hospital and they were trying to send him home, and she said, I'm sorry, I know I have you here till 8 o'clock. And I said, if I can stay here till 2 o'clock passing legislation, I can stay here with you to make sure that your husband gets home safely so that he passes in comfort. That's one way I would want to make sure, is to also show that human side of the government as well.
Same with you, Mr. Cooper. Do you have any tangible ways we can make sure you are accountable?
Well, I want to stand up for this one, because I got off the phone today. I was texting. I was telling Sister Will earlier that I had 2.5 hours of time to meditate. And in that meditation, I find myself on the road a lot. And so I started thinking about people like Bishop Mel Williams, Brother Curtis Johnson, that played a role in my life, and they held me accountable. I was just witnessing earlier about how he helped me accountable, be a father to my 4 children, how to be a husband to my wife of 35 years. So the way that you know that I'm going to be held accountable in the future is by how I've been held accountable in the past. I've been on the same job for 34 years, where I've received the first African-American man to receive a semi-retirement package so that I can be a community leader, a civic leader, a pastor. Matter of fact, this particular man that gave me that package happens to be Anglo and Republican, told a friend of his by the name of Congressman Jack Brooks that he would never vote Democrat. But he sent me a picture in 2018, and he said, I'm proud of you and the job you have done. That's how we work across the aisles. We show folks that we have integrity and love for the community, and you can sway the minds of those that don't consider you for the position that you're about to embark upon. So all I'm saying is this, is that I want you to continue, Southeast Texas, to hold me accountable when I'm in Austin, Texas, because together we can, and together we will win. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Weber, do you have any tangible ways that we can make sure that you are accountable?
Yes, I do. It starts with your ideas. I want, if you have an idea, that is, to come to me with that idea, and I will write legislation. Okay? Everything starts with an idea. And then when the legislation is written, then you submit it to the committee, and it goes to the floor. And that's how the law is created. So if you come to me with ideas, you will hold me accountable for turning it into legislation. for us in the great state of Texas in District 22. So with that being said, I would put myself up there for you so we can work together and make things happen in this area so we can prosper in District 22. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're getting down to our few last questions that we have, and we do have one question for you, Governor. What will you do to offset Governor Abbott on voter suppression?
I'm glad you asked. Not only what will I do, but what I've already done. We have to protest, protest, protest. Matter of fact, Dan Rather said that protest is the only way to get people that are suppressed back on course. It moves the needle just a little bit, but we must protest. There's a guy by the name of John Robert Lewis, congressman. He got arrested for protesting while he was a congressman. So even, could you imagine your governor getting arrested because he's in the Senate, because he's not getting the votes that he needs to get bills passed? Can you imagine your governor showing up to the House and saying, I double dog dare you to continue to pass voter suppression bills? I was that guy that challenged a guy that's from Beaumont, Texas, by the name of Dade Phelan. I did it publicly, I did it in private, and I did it in Austin, Texas. And I said, Mr. Phelan, I need you to go back and examine your heart, because I know the Phelans in the community of Beaumont, Texas. They are people of good integrity and good hearts. Be the Speaker of the House for the entire House of Texas, not just the Speaker of the House of a Republican Party. So I would do the same thing that you have been seeing me doing all of this time, but I need you all to get on board and tell your folks on Facebook, tell your folks that is in your backyard, tell your kin folks and everybody that you have a person that was reared up with you in the same high school, same college, just like she went to Lamar University, so did I. Working on a PhD in superintendent and education, because I decided that if I'm going to be dedicated to something, I need to have some skin in the game. My name is Michael Cooper. I am from Beaumont, Texas, North End Beaumont. Grew up right here at Barton Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. Little bitty curly head boy that's going to fight and going to war for you. There's not a happenstance that my name is Michael, warrior and angel, just for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Cooper. And we do have the other candidates for District 22, I believe, that has come in, Mr. Eugene Howard. 14, I'm sorry. Okay. But we do want to thank all of you, at least Mr. Weber, Governor, amen. Ms. Weber, we want to thank you for your questions. We're answering the questions tonight, and we want to switch gears just for a moment, and we have other candidates here tonight that we would like to get where you are right now. But let's give them a hand for their participation and their questions tonight. Thank you. Now I have here candidates, Constable for Precinct 8. Are you here? Okay, would you come up, Mr. Winston? Also, JP Precinct 2. Are you here? All right, would you come on up? And let's see.
Hot seat. Yes, sir.
There you go.
Warmed up for you. He's warmed up for you.
Okay. Anyone else from Justice of the Peace, Precinct 2? Okay, District Judge, 252nd District Court. Okay. Criminal District Attorney, Jefferson County. All right, if you have a seat. And the Jefferson County County Commissioner, Precinct 2. Okay, if you have a seat. Okay, and if you would, we're going to do the same format as we did before. Ms. Denise has she's our timer, and when the times get down to a minute. She's going to hold up the card for you when it's 1 minute, and then she'll hold it up again at 30 seconds, and you will begin to wind your answers down as you get close to the time frame. Now, let me begin by asking each of you just to take the time, take 1 minute, and introduce yourself and give the audience the position that you are running for. And we will start with you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Julia Rodriguez. I'm running for Jefferson County Commissioner in Precinct 2, which covers mostly Mid-County area. And I got into this race because I wasn't happy with how our local officials weren't accessible, like we were talking about earlier. And I look forward to talking with everybody today, even if you don't live in my district, because the county commissioner is such an important seat in local government. That's our taxes, that's our roads, that's our infrastructure, that's what happens when we flood. Yes, the city, but also the county. When the plants lock people out of their jobs, when the plants explode, like they did a couple of years ago, and devastating hundreds of homes in the explosion radius, it's the county that has power to make things better for the people. And so thank you for letting me be here, even though I don't have a primary, and I look forward to the rest of this forum.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Keith Giblin. I'm running for Jefferson County Criminal District Attorney. A little bit about I'm unopposed in the primary, and I'm also blessed to be unopposed in the general election. And so I've already hit the ground running and started in the working the job, essentially. A little bit about me. I too, Governor, I too was raised in the north end of Beaumont on the corner of Concord and Lucas, went to French High School, went to Lamar University, went to law school, worked 10 years at the Goodyear Chemical Plant while I went to Lamar, received my degree, went to law school, and very shortly after that was in private practice for a few years, and then went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mr. Wortham hired me as an assistant U.S. attorney while I worked on cases that were being investigated by the FBI and ATF and agencies like that. I worked there for 14 years. I was appointed to the bench as a federal magistrate judge by the district judges in this district. I served there for 17 years. And at the time of retirement, I still have some gas in me, a lot of gas in me. I'm a workaholic. I love to work and serve the community. And so I was praying for an opportunity for me to stay in this area where I grew up and raise my children and continue to serve the community. And Mr. Wortham announced that he was going to retire, and he called me. I retired off the federal bench on August the 31st, and I took a whole 8 hours off in retirement, and I went to work at the district attorney's office as an assistant district attorney. And so again, I've thrown myself into the job. It is an amazing job, and it's an amazing way for me to continue to serve this community that I love so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gene Winston. I've been in law enforcement now for approximately 30 years. I've had the opportunity to work at the Sheriff Department in various departments. I've also had the opportunity to be the Chief of Police for the Port Arthur Independent School District. The position that I'm running for now is Jefferson County Constable Precinct 8, and I've been doing this job approximately about 18 years now. 10 of them for Eddie Collins, and the last 8 years has been for Constable Chris Bates. I'm born and raised in Port Arthur, love the community, want to serve the community, and have been serving the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Joseph Guillory, and I'm running for Justice of the Peace Precinct 2. I'm a 1986 graduate from Lincoln High School in Port Arthur. I have 35 years of proven leadership. I'm currently serving my second term on the Port Arthur Independent School District School Board. Family man, 25 years in business, self-employed, husband, father, dedicated to my community, very involved with our children, mentoring, coaching. I'm looking for an opportunity to bring this office and the school district closer to develop more mentoring programs for our young kids. There's a tremendous opportunity in Port Arthur, and I'm willing to put in the work to make some things change in Port Arthur for Port Arthurans. I'm dedicated to what I've done. I'm a former law enforcement officer as well, so I understand the job that they do. My responsibility here in this court is to make sure that everyone that comes there receives the same equitable treatment under the law, fair and equitable. And that's what I intend to bring to this office.
Thank each and every one of you for your introduction. And I believe, Mr. Guillory, we have a question for you right off the bat, so glad you got the mic. That question is, your roles and responsibility as a JP, what are your roles?
The things that the JP office does, it handles all your tenant and landlord disputes, your death cases, marriage as well, Class C misdemeanors, lawsuits up to $20,000. It's an opportunity for the JP to be an ambassador to the city. That's the one office in your city that you can have direct access to, that you should have access to. And I've done that over the years while I've been on school board, making sure that I'm accessible. This court has the opportunity to make some tremendous improvement. The three cornerstones of this campaign is one, representation, two, fiscal responsibility, and then of course we want to make sure that we're spending the taxpayers' money appropriately. But the most important thing in this office is to ensure that the rule of law is followed, and that we do what we said we do, and that oath that we take, that we make sure that we adhere to that oath, that we don't treat some people different. And fair treatment is what I'm all about. I want to make sure I make that clear, because favors is what has gotten us into the predicament that we have in Port Arthur now. There's too many favors being done, and nobody's willing to stand up. And in this election, I've had a lot of opposition because of my position about doing what is necessary and what is right, even when nobody's looking.
Also, we want to ask you, Mr. Guillory, there's a question from the audience, and they would like to know, with your history of running for several positions, how can the people assure that you will be dedicated to one position if elected?
I want you just to look at the work and why we are public servants. It's for the people. And to be consistent is one of the things that I pride myself on. Being effective, being available, and being committed to what I believe in. This office, I'm 54, so I don't have a whole lot of years ahead of me to continue. But whatever I have, I'm going to give it to my community. So the commitment is there. The commitment to serve my community is there. So whatever position that you've blessed me with, I want to say thank you for entrusting me over the last 6 years with your children, making the policies and all as far as the educational system is concerned. That opportunity I take very seriously, and I want to say I appreciate that. In this court, in this responsibility, in this seat, we have a great opportunity to bridge some gaps in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Winston, we have a question from the audience for you also. And the question is, what makes you more qualified than the other two candidates?
What makes me more qualified than the other two candidates is, one, I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. Two, I've been a supervisor in law enforcement. As I stated earlier, I was the chief of police for the Port Arthur Independent School District for approximately 3 years. I also, currently, I'm Chris Bates, who is the constable of Jefferson County Precinct 2. I'm his number 2 person, which is the chief deputy. The other thing that makes me more qualified than the other candidates is I have been doing the job, that the position that we're running for, I've been doing it for 18 years. As I stated earlier, 10 with Constable Collins in Precinct 8, and currently 8 years with Chris Bates as his chief deputy. And I also hold the prestigious civil process proficiency certificate. This is a very, very difficult test. The test was so difficult that that it really put me in the doghouse for about a week, because normally when we would go to schools, I'd go to take my wife to the school. Well, this particular time, I told her that you can't come to the school with me this time because I'm going to take a test and I need to study. So I would go in the room at 4 o'clock when we get out, and I'd study, stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she'll call, and guess what she said? You better answer that phone. So that what makes me more qualified than not that I answer the phone, but my other stuff, experience, makes me more qualified than
I understand. I know about those late night phone calls when you got to have somebody tell you better answer that. Amen. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We want to go next to you, Mr. Giblin, and you being the candidate for district attorney. What would you do to bridge the gap that seems to be in our community with the racial mixed up on cases?
What I've done, and I'm very, very fortunate. You mentioned Chris Bates. I formed a relationship with a lot of law enforcement officers across through my career across this county. Alton Bates, who is the chief of police at PASD, Tim Duraso, I worked with him. He's Port Arthur PD. I went to meet with Chief Marbo yesterday with BASD. I have tried, and I continue to do that. These gentlemen are my friends. We grew up together in the system to work together to make sure that everything is done right and everything is done in a fair and just way. And it's those relationships, and that's what we have to do to bridge any gap in this community, is to work together and to listen to each other and address each other's concerns. And so that's what I feel I've done all my life, and that's what I will continue to do.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Giblin, in the court systems, the attorneys, court-appointed attorneys, there's a racial disconnect with the court-appointed attorneys as well. Is there anything that you can do to get more African Americans appointed as court-appointed attorneys? That is something that needs to be addressed. That's something that has to be taken up with the judges, because of course as prosecutors we don't have anything to do. It would be unethical for us to suggest to a judge what attorney to appoint. So I imagine that may be an issue that needs to be addressed with the judges, but I would certainly do that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Rodriguez, as a candidate for commissioner in Precinct 2, and there's a question here directly just for you. Hold on just a moment. What makes you more qualified than any other candidates that will be running for this office?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So when we think about experience and qualifications, we need to think about beyond, like what job did you have? Or what, we need to also think about what community service have you had? What kind of life experience have you had? My other opponents are older than me, and they're white and they're males. As a young woman of color, a new generation, there's never been a woman on that bench, and certainly not in Precinct 2. So to have a new perspective, a perspective that reflects what the normal people are going through. Over half of our population, according to census data, is women, and more the younger, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. These are the people that are going to work every day, who are being locked out by ExxonMobil, who are being hit by the economic crisis. And we need to have a seat at the table, and we need to say, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's affecting us, and this is what we need to see for our futures, for our kids' futures. And so it's time to get someone on the court who has that different life experience. Thank you.
Also, Ms. Rodriguez, what specific thing have you achieved in the last 4 years that would make you the best candidate for this position?
Can you repeat it? I lost one of your words.
What specific thing have you achieved in the last 4 years that would make you the best candidate for this position?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. So without getting into some of the boring boring parts of what the county commissioner does. The easiest way to think about it is a county commissioner is like a project manager. They see, you know, infrastructure, for example. We need to get this road fixed because these are the issues people are having. So what do we need to get done? When's the timeline? How much do things cost? You know, how can we get this bid? It's overseeing, you know, something that looks big and scary on paper and bringing it forth and coming to life. Most of my experience in volunteer service has been that. Event planning in film festivals and in theater, taking something that's obscure and making it real. The job I have right now at Lamar Institute of Technology as a workforce coordinator, education coordinator, is helping people get certificates. And which sounds, well, it doesn't sound, well, I don't know. You tell me if it sounds easy, but I am astonished by how hard it is to take, you know, we have all of these needs that are met, or that we need for jobs in this area, and the groundwork to get something up, to get someone a certificate to get a job. It's a lot of tedious processes. It's a lot of keeping track of moving parts, and that's all I've done really for the last 10 years in various ways, whether it be my job that I get paid in or whether it be how I volunteer my time. It's just making sure that the big picture comes together and keeping track of all the tiny little things that can tank a project. And so you need someone who's detail-oriented, someone who cares a lot, and someone who's going to go the extra mile to see it through. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guillory, I have another question for you from the audience. What would be your #1 change when you get elected?
#1 change? Probably is going to be my #1 phone call is to state and to the county, and to reestablish a relationship that would allow those officers to start filing those citations in this court to make this court more productive. That's high on my priority list.
Also, what makes the citizens feel comfortable about your vision? That the judge that holds this office for 11 years without being challenged would make you the best man to serve us?
Well, let's look at some reasons why he hadn't been challenged, and I'll tell you my experience. The phone calls that I received, phone calls that my father received to try to encourage me not to run, a form of voter suppression, in this case, candidate suppression, oppression. This is large in Port Arthur. If you're not in the clique, need I say more? This is what we're standing up against, and we're trying to break the back of special interest groups, those people that try to tell us what we deserve and what we should have. We should have what we desire that we should have. We should be a city that we desire, not some 5% of the population dictating to the other 95%. This election is so important that we make that change. We do that in this election. We can send a clear message to city council members so that we can start getting some things done. But if we don't get out to vote in this election, it's nobody's fault but our own. And it's business as usual, and that'll be unfortunate for the citizens of Port Arthur. Business as usual, the buddy system, the good old boy system. It's time out, and it's time for us all to put our feet and our hands to the plow, and let's get this thing done. It's for the citizens. It's for the future of our children. The thing that I've been doing most of my life is fighting for our children. Back 30 years ago, I worked with a foundation called Children's Miracle Network. And then I come here and I start working with Angel Tree Foundation and Toys for Tots. Why? Because our children they have a lot of needs. And one thing that they need to see grown adults of color that look just like them, applying themselves every day to instill in them that they can, and when they grow up that they will. And that's what this election is for me.
Thank you. Mr. Winston, same question for you. What would be your #1 change when you get elected?
The blessing with Jefferson County Precinct 8 is that it doesn't have to change. The office has been running efficiently. Constable Collins served the people for approximately 26, 27 years, and he did a great job in that position. So all I need to do is come in and not try to reinvent his wheel or the wheel. I just need to continue to serve the people. So here's what I share with people is this, and I need to stand up for this because this is important. You taught me that, Pastor. All right. So let me show you how important this is. when I started in law enforcement in 1991, and I have to be honest here, I judge people on the streets. If you smoke dope or you drink, because I'm the police, so I'm judging you. I started working for Constable Collins, and he was the first person that showed me community policing. He would get out there, he would talk to the people, he would help the people, and he started showing me that as a law enforcement officer, you can help people. And that's what I learned from him. What I learned from Constable Bates was he gave me the opportunity to do what I had already learned from Constable Collins. He gave me the floor and he let me do it. He let me run the office. So to answer your question is, I just need to be available. The office is already run. He did a great job with running the office, and so all I need to do is be available and keep the office running efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, I think, a couple of more candidates that we'd like to have come up, but we want to thank you for your comments tonight, and we hope that you have the best campaign coming up in this election. And we're hoping that I know we have the support of the community that's here tonight because they want to hear what you had to say. So we want to give you an opportunity now to, let's give them a hand, these who have come this far. And we're going to have a couple of more candidates to come up, and we'd like for you to just continue to stay with us if you can, so that we conclude our forum for this evening. Amen. You may be. All right, we also have with us in the audience tonight, Commissioner Bo Alfred is here. He's also here, and we would like to recognize him this evening. And I've also been informed that there is a table in the foyer for voter registration. If there's anyone who need to register to vote, you can do that tonight while you are here. And so we want to ask those other candidates that's unopposed, if you have not come up as yet, if you would just come up, and so that we can conclude our night for tonight. I believe all of our candidates that came up earlier, we want you to come up now who are unopposed. I got 1, 2. Okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, we'll do 4, and the others that's left, if you just have a seat on the front row, we'll get you as well. You can have the other 2 seats over there. All right, so what we would like to do is get you to, first of all, introduce yourselves and express the position that you're running for, and we would like to begin over here at the first table with the ladies on my left.
Good evening again. My name is Chelsea Ramos. I am running for the 317th District Court in Jefferson County. That court is a family law court, and it serves the entire county of Jefferson County. The current judge is Judge Larry Thorne, and he is retiring after 24 years of service. I am unopposed in the Democratic primary, and I will face a Republican opponent in the general election in November. This bench is very important to our community. We only have 2 family courts that serve the entire county. This court will service half of our families in Jefferson County. Our county is made up of families. Issues that occur in this court that the judge has to make decisions about affect not only our families, but affect our community directly. I've practiced family law for 20 years. I've never practiced any other area of law. I've dedicated my entire career to this area of law. I was also appointed to serve as a family court judge in Harris County for 4 years in the 246th District Court. During my service there, I had over 2,000 cases on my docket each year. So the volume of family law matters that I have seen is just extraordinary. Harris County is one of the largest counties in the entire United States. So I have a lot of experience in running a court efficiently, quickly, humbly, with kindness, and with a servant's heart. I went through my own divorce after I left the bench and moved back to Southeast Texas, where I was born and raised. I wanted to raise my children in a community full of family and faith. That's how I was raised, and my children have adapted very well over the last several years since we've been back. But my personal experiences from divorce and an extremely abusive relationship, now I'm remarried, so there is life after divorce, and I'm a stepmom. So I believe I am the most experienced candidate for this family law bench because of not only my professional background, but also my personal experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jess Prince, and I am a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. I, too, grew up here in the north end of Beaumont. Owned a business for almost 2 decades. I am also a commercial broker and have my own brokerage firm. I have my master's in public administration, and I earned that so that I could start seeking roles with governmental entities in our community, because through my nonprofit work, I've seen how systems are set up and that the only way you can change those systems is if you're inside of them. So I started working with governmental entities several years ago. I've worked with the Regional Planning Commission of Southeast Texas. I coordinated their grant funding, essentially. I was their economic resiliency planner for the 3-county region after Hurricane Harvey. So I worked with federal and state level governments to allocate all of those funds to projects within our community. Later, I went to work with the City of Beaumont in planning, and I did all of their oversight and compliance for various government grants. And most recently, I was hired by Jefferson County after Carolyn Guidry retired as the Chief Deputy County Clerk. So having worked there, I did discover that I love the job. It's very customer service based, and it's an entirely administrative role that I enjoy a great deal. So I am running for that office because I feel that my credentials will be a great asset to our community.
Thank you. Would you introduce yourself to the congregation?
Very few generations are afforded the opportunity of defending freedom in this hour of maximum danger. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eugene Howard. I'm a 7th-generation Texan. I'm a son of a Union soldier who fought for people that look like me to be viewed as human, and for everyone that believes in freedom and democracy. My platform is very simple. I look forward to getting your questions. I'm running on jobs and justice. And when I say jobs, I'm not just talking about employment. I'm talking about access to capital, subsidizing our entrepreneurship, which drives our local Texas and national economy, and also economic freedom, where we can make the decisions for our communities that best suit our communities. And justice. Sitting in the church, standing in the church, as I speak to this illustrious crowd, I'm a black man living in America. So I can talk about 400 years of injustice. But to be clear, I want to get criminal justice reform, judicial reform. I want to get police reform. We need to have better environmental justice. We need to be a more just society. Like Dr. King said, the time is always right to do what is right. And that's why I'm running for the 14th Congressional District of Congress out of the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Everett Boy Alford, County Commissioner, Precinct 4. First of all, I want to thank you guys for coming out. This is what government is about. When you have individuals that run, give them opportunity to state their case. From my perspective, I've been to Jefferson County. I'm a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. The only time I've been away is to go to college and back. I've been county commissioner 20 years. During that 20 years, we raised taxes 1 time. And guess what? That little south end boy ties to the north end, daddy from Pear Orchard, had to go around this whole county and get the approval from the taxpayers. Why? Because they want to know if you raise taxes, would you bring it back down? I gave my word. Within 5 years, we brought it back down to where it was, and it has never been back up since. The reason it was raised because after Hurricane Rita. Our county was broke. That's when I found out about making sure we have a good reserve, making sure we have a good functioning government, and making sure that we can get the county up and going, meaning the plants, the businesses, small businesses, and everything else. That is very essential and important. County Commissioner job, as my mentor told me, "Oh, you got an engineering degree?" Yeah. You went to Southwest Texas State, got your master's. Guess what? It means nothing if you're not a social worker. You have to have it in your heart to help people. It's about helping people. It's about making sure you're staying true to your belief where you was raised and reared in the church with me. So I say to you, I don't have an opponent in the Democratic primary. Thank you, Lord. I don't have an opponent in the Republican primary. Thank you for those great Democrats and letting it be known that I have been there, I will be there, and I will be a warrior for the citizens of Jefferson County, and that means all citizens, but the people of Precinct 4, because you've given me this opportunity. I will never turn my back, never not stand, and will always be there with an open door and open heart to help you. God bless you and keep you in his prayers, and keep on keeping on, Brother Cooper.
That's a hard act to follow, I'm going to tell you. My name is Charlie Hallmark. I'm your current incumbent Jefferson County Treasurer. Just for some that may not know, is that I grew up in Port Arthur, and our family had a dry cleaning business in Port Arthur for about 40 years. The community that I grew up in served, it was small, but it served us, and it served the surrounding areas. I learned a lot. I went to Lamar, studied criminal justice, never did anything regarding criminal justice because really my love was business. And while I was working in our dry cleaning business, I was twice elected to the Port Arthur School Board. At that time, I was the youngest member ever elected to the Port Arthur School Board. I was 27 years old. I became the youngest school board president in Port Arthur in the history of it. And I learned a lot. And what I learned is that we need public servants. We need people that care about other people. It's one thing to get elected, but it's another thing to serve. It's another thing to care about what other people are dealing with in their lives. Resumes are great, titles are great, but it means nothing if you don't care about other people. And I got into real estate after we sold our dry cleaning business. I've been in it for 18 years, and the calling was to run for Jefferson County Treasurer. I was blessed in 2018 to win that election, and I've been there for the last 3 years, and we've done some pretty amazing things. You know, the previous 8 years before I got there, under the Republican administration, the Treasurer's Office earned about $2.9 million in 8 years for the citizens of Jefferson County. In 3 years, we've earned $2.6 million. We have effectively paid for 6 years of the Treasurer's Office budget in 3 years. In our collections department, Thomas Seedy and I partnered, and we have quadrupled the participation in that department in just 3 years. There's more to do. When I took office, there was no Wi-Fi technology in the basement of the courthouse. Now, can you believe that? We partnered with the maintenance department. I brought the concerns to him. He said, "Charlie, let's work together on this," and we did. And with the blessing of the court, we now have Wi-Fi technology in the basement of the courthouse. And so, you know, it's a matter of when you go to work every day, it's a paying job. Yeah, it has benefits, but it's public service. And if you forget that, if you ever forget the fact that
Yeah, it's not a salary attached to it, but you are there to serve the citizens. And I'm going to tell you something else that's very important that I found out is that we get an interest rate from our bank who holds our money. We were getting 1/3 of what the federal rate, what the feds give the banks. We were getting that every day the county was in their bank account. That's unconscionable. That should never happen. Now, with the new contract that we negotiated, whatever the Federal Reserve rate is, a 90-day Treasury rate is, we're going to get 25 basis points less than that. So whenever I took office, just to give you an example, the rate that the feds were giving was about 2.40, which would have meant that we would have gotten about 2.15. We were getting 0.7. That should never, to me, that's not service. That's a dereliction of duty in your service to the citizens of Jefferson County. We are the go-between between the banks and the citizens. Your job is to always represent the people. Your job is not to represent the banks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Bob Mabry. I'm running for the Court of Appeals. My dad got the first piece of property in the 9th Supreme Judicial District, which includes 10 counties. He got it in 1970. And either we've lived there or we've had some member of our family there ever since. I went to Austin College in Sherman, Texas, studied philosophy. When you are seeking a judge for the Court of Appeals, they don't just deal with individual cases. A Court of Appeals makes rules that apply to everybody. And those rules, if they are carelessly, thoughtlessly done, can have a negative impact on the day-to-day decisions that other judges and other law enforcement officials have to make. I ain't nothing special. There are people better qualified for me for this job. Unfortunately for you all, none of them are in the race. I am the only person running who has been a prosecutor. I am the only person running who has ever supervised and trained appellate lawyers, which I did at the Public Defender Office, which is where I got upset about how things operated at the 9th Court of Appeals. In case you didn't know, a lot of the cases that we did were in Conroe, and they were appealed to Beaumont, and some of them appeared to me to be not reading the record that was there. I'll make no big promises. I make you one. I do live in the real world. And secondly, if you give me papers, I will read them. I will follow them in judging without fear or favor, though the heavens fall.
Thank you. And we're just about at our time frame that we had set for tonight, but before we let you go, we want to ask each of you another question, give you 2 minutes to respond to it. And we know that you can do it within that time frame. And that question that we have that we want to propose to each of you is that on your first 90 days, if you are elected or if you are put back in office where you don't have any any other candidates running against you, what changes do you see that is necessary for Jefferson County?
Okay, to remind you again, my position that I'm running for is the 317th District Court. That's a family district court. Judge Larry Thorne's been there for 24 years. He's done a great job managing that docket, but it's definitely time to have a new set of eyes, go through the docket and see what cases are on the docket that should be disposed of, cases that need to be pushed that have been sitting around too long. Having been a family court judge for 4 years before, one of the most important roles or positions of a judge is to administer the docket, administer the court. And a court runs efficiently when you don't have a lot of cases clogging up the system. On midnight of December 31st, once I'm sworn in, my first job would be to take the entire docket and look at every single case and see, why is this case still on the docket? How long has it been on the docket? Should this case be set for a dismissal? Should this case be set for trial? Should we have a status hearing? A lot of these cases are sitting around because of procedural defects. Sometimes there's a bankruptcy that is pending regarding the party's property, and you have to lift the bankruptcy stay to simply enter a final order. Those things can be done pretty efficiently and pretty quickly, but we need to find them and dig for them. And just lastly, I do ask for your support. I do ask for your vote. Sitting here in this church, definitely brings back all of my childhood memories of sitting in church and singing hymns and praying. And there's my favorite from my childhood, which was, "Here I am, Lord, it is I, Lord, I hear you calling in the night." So if you know that one, you can kind of relate to what I'm saying is, I'm here, and if it is me, I want to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when I'm elected in the first 90 days, having worked in that office, I do have several initiatives that I'm prepared to set forth. The first of which being increasing the accessibility of our office online. There is a very great lack of interfacing with our community with the website. There is zero social media presence, and that is challenging for any and all constituents. And the majority of the phone calls that the 39 employees in our office receive on a daily basis are questions about how to navigate the bad website. That's not efficient, it's not productive, and it's not helpful to our residents. Secondly, there have not been raises or employee evaluations comprehensively done in quite some time, and a lot of those need to be completed. There's a lot of raises that need to be had in that department. Many of the people that have worked there have been there over a decade, and so that is high on my agenda. Lastly, I would say, as a professional grant writer, I see several opportunities to draft grant proposals that will benefit the residents of our county, and I feel confident that those will be awarded.
Thank you.
Within my first 90 days, I will make sure that the Build Back Better funds that have been allocated for our region are unlocked and allocated to not only this region. My district encompasses not only Jefferson, it encompasses Brazoria, Galveston, and Orange. And the current occupant, the insurrectionist bigot, has voted no against everything, the child tax credit, the Build Back Better. He didn't want to certify our duly elected president. So within the first 90 days, and he also sits on the environmental committee where in Jefferson County, you're 33% more likely to get cancer than anywhere else in the state of Texas. So that's something in the very immediate future, once I get rid of the insurrectionist bigot, that I can go and make sure that our people down here are getting the resources for infrastructure to build back our better roads, to make sure we can handle these storms that are coming from climate change. And we can actually, besides that, I want to really, hopefully, we're not still fighting the voting rights fight. But if we still are, I still want to make sure we have the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Thank you.
My first 90 days will be going back to sit down and hope and pray, number one, that we have an extra vote. We need 3 votes to get anything accomplished on Commissioner's Court. What was stated about raises, I can visit with them, but when it comes down to budgeting, I have to have 3 votes 3 votes move everything. So it's very important that we have those 3 votes, however we get them. But more important than that, I want to make sure we're efficient in all of those funds that are coming from the Fed, and make sure that whenever we get them what they call redirected, where we lose some funds, when it comes back, a lot of time it doesn't get back to the commissioners, court, everyone, and they move those funds to special projects and come out of. So it will be working with the state rep that's there to make sure that we're on top of what occurs when money comes here and then it goes back to a state agency, so we can make sure, yes, I got you, ma'am. And more important, like I said, more important than that is to finish what we have done, and that is to continue to grow Jefferson County with jobs and opportunity, with abatements and things of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You know, what I want to do is continue what we are doing. I mean, we're changing banks. We're getting away from Wells Fargo, thank God. You know, they're in the news just about every day. So we're, you know, kicking them to the curb. That was a big improvement. And always looking for ways to improve service, the ways to be more efficient. I mean, the treasurer's office is not a glamorous position. You know, we're not, we don't get to give abatements like Commissioner does or make big splashy headlines. But, you know, our accounts payable, you know, our vendors, I would like for us to see us move towards, you know, direct payment so that we don't have to issue checks. Because if every check that you put out in the community is another chance for fraud. So if you're issuing out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of checks, well, that's an opportunity for fraud to occur. And another thing that we do, and we print out, you know, we have about 1,200 employees. Well, you know, about over 1,000 check stubs, paper check stubs that we, you know, just think to the paper that we're using, the time that it takes to print them. Then the department heads have to get all of those check stubs. They got to pass them out to their, you know, their employees and their staff. I mean, we could go to an online portal to where if you want to see your check stub, then you just log on and there it is. Just, it never fails. Somebody's always needed check stubs because they're trying to get a loan at the bank or they need it for something. Well, they can just always log in and there it is. So we want to continue progress, but again, I think it takes a willingness to understand what the needs of the community are and a willingness to serve. And that's what I want to continue to do and always look for ways to do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
An appeals court is weird. It operates in a different way than other government agencies. We have to take. Anybody can bring an appeal of a case. Anybody. That's your right. What I would want to do in the first 90 days, and I don't know if I'm going to be lucky enough to do it, but I want to look for a case where all the other people, all the Republicans are agreeing. And I want to find one that I don't agree on. I want to find one or maybe I even agree with the conclusion, but I don't agree with the reasoning. And you go, why? Who cares? Because the Ninth Court of Appeals is the intermediate court between the trial courts and the Supreme Court of Texas, the highest civil court, and the Court of Criminal Appeals, highest criminal court. They make their decisions on what cases to take based on what the opinions in the intermediate courts are. What happens is that all four of them agree all the time about everything. And I think that's just a cheat to the Ninth Supreme Judicial District.
Thank you. And we want to thank each of you tonight for sharing with us your candidacy, and we thank you for taking the time out from your schedules to be with us on tonight. And let's give all of our candidates a hand again tonight for participating. And we know that this probably won't be the last forum that you'll be in before the election, but we do want to thank you for coming out and sharing with us tonight. I do want to also thank the officers, already elected officials rather, that's in the audience tonight. I'm going to ask the elected officials that's here to stand as well and be recognized tonight, all the elected officials. All right. Thank you. And we also want to thank the host pastor of this church tonight for opening up his doors and allowing us to come in. And we're going to ask him if he have any words at this time. Let's give Pastor Aaron Reynolds a hand as he comes at this time.
Thank you, Pastor Tubbs. Thank each of you for coming and sharing with us on this evening. It's so important for everyone to be a part of the election process. I am one of those young people that marched during the civil rights movement in the early 60s. We sat in at Crest, Walgreens, and places like that. Being a black child, we were not allowed to go to the bathroom in JCPenney and places like that. So election is important to me. And I'm just so thankful that you all came out to help make this forum a success. God bless you. God keep you is our prayer. Amen?
Amen.
Pastor, if you all do like I'm doing, stand. Father in heaven, we bless your name. We thank you for this awesome privilege of coming before your presence. We thank you for allowing us to gather in your name. We pray now that you would bless every candidate, every family that's being represented. We ask that you would dismiss us from this place, but never your presence. In Jesus' name, amen.